The 20th century bore witness to atrocities that defy comprehension. Two of the most chilling, the Holodomor in Soviet Ukraine and the Nazi T4 Euthanasia Program, were deliberate campaigns to destroy vulnerable populations. The Holodomor, orchestrated by Stalin, led to the starvation of millions in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Nazi T4 program targeted the disabled, resulting in the systematic murder of thousands. These atrocities left deep scars on humanity, reminding us of the depths of human cruelty. What dark truths lie behind these hidden horrors? In 1932, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin enforced brutal policies of collectivization across Ukraine. Grain was confiscated from villages to meet unrealistic quotas, leaving the rural population with nothing. This famine, known as the Holodomor, killed millions in less than 2 years. Entire families resorted to eating bark, roots, and even more unthinkable measures: cannibalism. Despite the scale of suffering, Stalin's government suppressed all reports of the famine, maintaining a facade of prosperity to the outside world. Survivors recall the unimaginable horrors, with one elderly Ukrainian recounting, "We ate anything we could find. The hunger was unbearable." Historical documents reveal desperate pleas for help from villagers, letters that were ignored by the authorities. International newspapers began to report on the famine, but the Soviet government dismissed these as anti-Soviet propaganda. Today, the Holodomor is remembered through memorials and events, ensuring that the world never forgets this atrocity. In 1939, Adolf Hitler signed a secret order launching the Nazi T4 Euthanasia Program. The goal? To systematically exterminate those deemed unworthy of life, including the disabled and mentally ill. Families were told their loved ones had died of natural causes, while victims were subjected to horrific experiments. This program was a testing ground for the Holocaust, introducing methods of mass murder that would later be scaled up. The T4 program was named after the address of its headquarters, Tiergartenstrasse 4, in Berlin. It targeted those with physical and mental disabilities, labeling them as life unworthy of life. Victims were transported to killing centers where they were murdered using gas chambers and lethal injections. Despite public protests, the program continued in secret, paving the way for the mass exterminations of the Holocaust. The T4 program's legacy is a chilling reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the importance of remembering history. What connects these two tragedies is their cold, calculated execution, and the deliberate efforts to hide the truth. Stalin's famine was masked by propaganda, while the T4 program operated under the guise of public health. Both were driven by ideologies that valued control over human life. These acts show how regimes can weaponize bureaucracy and ideology to carry out mass atrocities, leaving the world to uncover the truth years later. The Holodomor and the T4 program are stark reminders of the lengths to which totalitarian regimes will go to maintain their grip on power. The systematic nature of these atrocities highlights a broader pattern where state machinery is used to perpetrate and conceal mass violence. The historical significance of these events lies in their ability to teach us about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of vigilance. By studying these dark chapters, we can better understand the mechanisms of state-controlled atrocities and work towards preventing them in the future. The Holodomor and the T4 program serve as grim reminders of what happens when unchecked power targets the vulnerable. Recognizing these events isn't just about history, it's about vigilance in the present. Today, with state propaganda and disinformation still rampant, these stories remind us of the importance of uncovering the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried. In our interconnected world, the lessons from these atrocities are more relevant than ever. We must stay vigilant, educate ourselves, and stand up against any form of oppression. By remembering the past, we empower ourselves to create a future where such horrors are never repeated. The fight for truth and justice is ongoing, and it requires all of us to be active participants. Hidden atrocities like these demand our attention, not only to honor the victims, but to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. By remembering and sharing these stories, we can keep the memory of the victims alive and educate future generations. While the atrocities orchestrated by Stalin and the prelude to the Holocaust were devastating, the global response and the role of the media in uncovering these truths have been crucial. Gap 2S. International bodies, historians, and journalists have worked tirelessly to bring these stories to light. The media in particular played a pivotal role in unveiling the hidden atrocities, often at great personal risk. GAP2S, newspapers, documentaries, and now digital platforms have become powerful tools in educating the public and holding those in power accountable. The courage of journalists who ventured into war zones risking their lives to report the truth cannot be overstated. GAP2S. Yet, the international community's response has often been a mix of condemnation and inaction. While some governments and organizations have taken steps to address these crimes, others have remained silent, highlighting the complexities of global politics. GAP2S. It is through the relentless efforts of the media and international advocates that we are reminded of our collective responsibility to seek justice for the victims and to prevent such atrocities from happening again. As we reflect on the atrocities orchestrated by Stalin and the Holocaust, it is imperative to consider the long-term impact on the survivors and their descendants. GAP2S. The trauma experienced by those who lived through these horrors did not end with the cessation of violence, it reverberated through generations. GAP2S. Survivors often carry deep psychological scars, manifesting as PTSD, depression, and anxiety, which in turn affected their families. GAP2S. Children and grandchildren of survivors frequently grew up in environments shadowed by the past, grappling with the weight of inherited trauma and the responsibility of remembrance. GAP2S. Moreover, the loss of entire communities, cultural heritage, and familial bonds left a void that could never be completely filled. GAP2S. The impact on identity and belonging was profound, as many descendants struggled to reconcile their family histories with their present lives. GAP2S. Yet, amidst the pain, there emerged a resilience and a commitment to ensuring that such atrocities are never forgotten. GAP2S. Educational programs, memorials, and survivor testimonies have become vital in preserving these histories, fostering a sense of community and promoting healing. GAP2S. The stories of survivors and their descendants are not just about suffering but also about strength, endurance, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. In the aftermath of such profound tragedies, the world has sought to learn and grow from these dark chapters in history. GAP2S. The lessons learned from the atrocities orchestrated by Stalin and the Holocaust have significantly influenced contemporary policies on human rights. GAP2S. These events underscored the critical need for international vigilance and swift action to prevent similar atrocities from occurring again. GAP2S. The establishment of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were direct responses to the horrors witnessed during these periods. GAP2S. These frameworks aim to protect individuals from state-sponsored violence and ensure that basic human rights are upheld globally. GAP2S. Moreover, the principle of never again has become a rallying cry, driving efforts to educate future generations about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of standing against tyranny. GAP2S. Educational programs and memorials serve as constant reminders of the past, fostering a culture of remembrance and vigilance. GAP2S. Governments and organizations worldwide have also implemented policies to protect vulnerable populations, promote justice, and support those affected by past atrocities. GAP2S. These measures include the establishment of international courts, truth and reconciliation commissions, and various initiatives aimed at providing reparations and support for survivors and their descendants. GAP2S. As a global community, we are reminded of the importance of upholding human dignity and the rule of law. GAP2S. The stories of resilience and strength from survivors inspire us to continue advocating for justice and human rights. GAP2S. By learning from the past, we can shape a future where such atrocities are prevented and the fundamental rights of every individual are respected and protected. GAP2S. Let us commit to fostering a world where history's darkest moments are not repeated, and where the lessons learned pave the way for a more just and humane society. To truly grasp the magnitude of these atrocities, it is essential to understand the timeline of events that led to them, and the aftermath that followed. Let's begin with the events preceding the orchestrated starvation by Stalin and the Holocaust. In the early 1930s, Stalin's regime implemented the policy of collectivization, forcing millions of peasants into state-controlled farms. This policy led to widespread famine, most notably the Holodomor in Ukraine, where millions perished due to starvation. By 1932, Stalin's government had confiscated grain and other foodstuffs, exacerbating the crisis. The world watched as Stalin's policies decimated entire populations, but international response was limited. Fast forward to the 1930s in Germany, where Adolf Hitler rose to power. In 1933, the Nazi Party implemented laws that systematically stripped Jews and other minorities of their rights. Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass in 1938, marked a violent escalation, with Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues being destroyed. By 1941, the Nazis had initiated the final solution, leading to the mass deportation and extermination of Jews in concentration camps. The Holocaust resulted in the murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others, including Romani people, disabled individuals, and political dissidents. The end of World War II in 1945 brought these atrocities to light. The Nuremberg trials were held to bring Nazi war criminals to justice, setting a precedent for international law. Similarly, the Soviet Union faced scrutiny for its policies, though accountability was limited due to the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War. Post-war, the global community took significant steps to prevent such horrors from recurring. The United Nations was established in 1945, and in 1948 the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. These frameworks aimed to promote peace, protect human rights, and ensure that atrocities like those orchestrated by Stalin and the Holocaust would never happen again. In the decades that followed, numerous initiatives were launched to support survivors and their descendants. Truth and reconciliation commissions, international courts, and various reparative measures have been implemented worldwide. These efforts underscore the commitment to learning from history and fostering a just and humane society. As we reflect on this detailed timeline, we are reminded of the resilience of those who suffered and the importance of vigilance and advocacy in preventing future atrocities. Understanding the past helps us shape a better future, where human rights are upheld and dignity is preserved for all. Thank you for staying with us through this exploration. Please like, subscribe, and share to help us continue uncovering and sharing these crucial stories. Together, we can make a difference.